Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to be doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. Today's video will be for the standard best of 3 traditional standard, and we're going to take a look at the tier list in terms of what are the best performing decks right now, highest win rates at the Mythic rank. As always, we try to get these out weekly for every format, best of 1, best of 3, so check out the playlist. For Explorer and Historic, I have to wait till 7 days from the set release, which was after the 16th. I'm recording these on the 16th, so hopefully on the 17th, tomorrow, when I check in, I can access those, kind of drill down to the granularities. Like I was trying to do Explorer, but literally it's just Amalia combo and Phoenix right now, so don't particularly want to just feature a video with 2 decks only. So as always, we get the data from UntappedGG, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, aggregates your win rate with other users, gives us a whole bunch of cool stats. And yeah, we're going to jump into it. The link is in the video description for Untapped. Let them know I sent you. I'll paste all these deck lists, timestamp them, you're good to go. So we're going to start off with popularity of the day. So a deck could be very popular for a number of reasons. It's a fun deck to play. It's a cheap deck to play. It's a deck that hasn't changed much. Whatever it may be, but it doesn't necessarily correlate to win rate. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but we're going to take a look there. So I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. So we're going to look Diamond and Mythic rank for popularity, but I put the parameters when we actually look at the decks to like Mythic only and 50 game sample to try to find like what are the most like efficient decks right now. So we'll take a look at that. So a little bit smaller sample size of games, but seeing which configurations and stuff like that work, given that the meta hasn't shifted too much. And as we see, like Esper Midrange, still the most popular, 30%. Domain, 19. The Boros Convoke, which is pretty much mono white aggro splash red. For the Haster dude, mono red at 8%. Golgari at 5%. Then we have some like dinos. The Gruul like Picnic Raider aggro, and then 4 and 5 color domain are largely the same. The 5 color is usually because it plays a Tali, but most of the efficient ones are 4 color. So I just want to kind of show, which is kind of interesting. So for whatever reason, Esper Midrange was like 30-ish%, and then at the beginning of December, nobody was really playing it for the first couple days of the month, and then it just like shot right back up. But like Esper's been, I'm very tired of Esper in Standard. It's been almost omnipresent for since Capenna, really, when all the connive cards came out, and it just keeps getting better and better each set. The 3-year rotation is just making it good stuff soup in a way. But the domain decks kind of largely held firm. Mono red had its peak at about 15 and is slowly coming down. The Convoke deck, very popular at the beginning of the month, and then it's slowly dropped as well. So we're kind of seeing some trends in that sense, but we'll jump into it. Like I said, actually was doing Mythic. So Mythic rank November 14th through the 16th. So that's actually a month's worth of data. Even if we look like for the last week, it's not as much, but I was looking for like the month just to see some of the more tuned lists, and it's kind of interesting. So 22,000 games. This Esper Midrange deck is, now it's being silly and it won't show, but it was actually showing an 81% win rate over 54 games. So this configuration of Esper seems to be doing really well. So most of them have moved away from the Legends package and is playing solely kind of, let's play the most busted cards in the color. So Rafine, obviously, kind of the backbone of so many of these Esper decks. You're pairing it with Wedding Announcement, the Virtue of Loyalties. We've seen Lord Skitter in these decks. Now it's been kind of replaced with a couple copies of Tishana's Tidebinder. Think against Domain, Leyline Binding, Atraxis Trigger, the Archangel Trigger, the ramp triggers from either 3 and 4 drop ramps. They're all triggered abilities, so you can stifle all of them, which is really sweet. Shieldred's ability to take damage. All relevant things to hit in that case. Cut downs, the Deep Cavern Bat is hand hate, Denic Mastermind 2-2 split, go for the throats, a couple make disappears, the Schooner for card advantage as well, through like the Explore, and then you have like the Restless Anchorage in the mana base here. to help supplement and give you another evasive creature. The sideboard, like hand hate, removal, destroy evils. So it's just like counter spells, situational removals, some shielders for life gain. You can shift up. So the nice thing with this deck, and because it's basically good card soup, is you can shift to more control, you can be more proactive, you have like tools to answer every matchup in that sense. The domain deck is this particular version here, it's Splunking, and this one's 64 games at 69% win rate. I don't know why it's showing here, but then when I open it up, it doesn't actually populate, but this has largely just become a green-white with a very light splash, and it's leveraging Cavern of Souls as well here. Now, your key cards in the deck, the Atraxas as well as the Archangels, are both angels. So this particular variant, well, we've seen the versions that are on the Battle, Invasion of Zendikar, on the Dinosaur ramp. This version's leveraging Spelunking to put the cards into play. So you kind of get that value there, up the beanstalk with all your big drops. So it's interesting to see this one is playing a little bit more control oriented, while all your triomes will come into play untapped. The card you put into from your hand, you're not playing any caves, but you still kind of get that value if you're to fetch anything in that sense. But just having these come into play untapped has a lot of utility, and it does kind of ramp you in that same case. So interesting to see how this variant is putting up a reasonable kind of facsimile. Like we have another version a little bit further down. This is the more traditional, so a couple percentage points less, but this has been kind of the stock list for a while now. This version is offering like a little bit of a change. And that's what I kind of want to highlight week over week, just things that you can try out. Like these decks are going to be pretty much the same, like the core of the deck. Like Domain's not going to radically change, but kind of the configurations and stuff of people. But hand hate, some counters for more aggressive decks. You have the knockout blow to populate. For discard, you have Obstinate Baloth and Jace's for the mirror. So depending on how you want to attack that. Mono Red Aggro, this one here was, and I apologize, I don't know why it's being a little silly. This version was at 68.96, so we're 69% mono red, can't get any nicer. And we've seen variations. I've always been more fond in best of 3 to have the Witch Stalker Frenzy Nahiri's Warcrafting version. A couple interesting inclusions here. First off, 20 lands. I think it's a little too little, but it's obviously working. We're seeing a couple Reckless Impulses as well as Inti in this list to kind of churn through your deck. Feldon, single copy. Feldon tends to be worse in best of 3 versus best of 1, where the format tends to have more exile and black-based removal, where in best of 1, it's more of these aggressive creature mirrors that bounce into each other. So it has a little bit more utility there. Only 2 Phoenix Chick, but full Monstrous Rage, so Spear kind of package in there. Full 4 Mishras is also interesting. I've never been super fond of this many colorless, given that you have so many 1-drops, but again, it's working to some extent, and it's an interesting kind of approach. The sideboard, you have Lithomantic Barrage, very good against Esper, Torch Tower, so just early removal. I don't know why Voldaren Aperture is in here. This shouldn't be in your sideboard. Neither should Godric, like 4th copy, gets redundant in that case. I would probably just play more Lithomantic Barrage, to be honest. And you can play, if you want the Jaya, you could play Furnace Punisher. There's a couple different options there, but some interesting sideboard choices, I would say. I like Forge against heavier removal decks. I think like the removal package here is reasonable. You have your 5 drops, so there's some good options here. I would say just if you want the easiest switch, trim these, play Furnace Punisher, and you're good in that case. Boros Convoke is the next deck at 68%. So like I said, this is a base mono white deck that is just playing Imidane's Recruiter in the main. Think of it almost as Boros Humans Light. And you're just playing aggressive creatures with Imidanes to haste them out in that respect. Thalia's attacks. You can have nice aggressive curves against some of the more controlling decks. Destroy Evils for the bigger things and enchantments. Invasion is kind of a Thoughtseize style effect, tax effect in Boros colors. Lantern Flare as cheap removal. Extraction Specialist for matchups where they have heavy removal, but it's not exile based. knockout blow for like mono red, and then for the grindier matchups you have Wedding Announcement, just allows you to go wide in that capacity. Some Myrics in the mana base, Cavern for counters, Secluded Courtyard also helps you cast your Imidane's Recruiter by playing like just kind of creature focused. So they call this one Convoke. You technically Convoke, there's a couple different variants, but think of it as like Boros Aggro in that capacity. We then have Golgari Midrange. This version of Golgari was at 65%. There's a couple different versions that we saw. If I scroll down, like 56, a little bit lower, but this one still seeing some Golgari. I don't think it's the best necessarily in a field with heavy domain. The matchup seems pretty tough. I'm not too sure how Golgari faces into Esper. I think Esper probably still has the advantage because you can go into like Wedding Announcements, which is tough to deal with, as well as like Virtue of Loyalty. So you get a lot of kind of utility in that capacity. But this version here is playing an interesting spread. So your hand hate, your early removal, Mosswood Dread Knight's the big appeal, along with Glissa of being in the Golgari colors. Terra Sunders help, as well as Tranquil Fillback versus all the enchantments, whether it be Leyline Bindings, Wedding Announcements, stuff like that. Your Lilianas can be very good against Domain and probably not as great against Esper, since they usually have a lot of like creature tokens that can soak up incidental edict style effects. Kind of going from that angle. This version's on the Blossoming Tortoise to kind of ramp you up. Sheoldreds, Gix Command, Nissa Virtue at the top end. Your mana base, you got a lot of utility creature alliance to kind of beat in. Extra removal, hand hate, Terra Sunders, path for like more aggressive decks. Rankle's Prank's probably really good against the domain deck, just, you know, forcing to sack some bigger creatures. The Path of Peril is actually incidentally needed in that matchup. You wouldn't think Path, but it does help with if they go, what's the Herd Migration, sorry. It's been a day. Herd Migration to kind of hit them that way there, and then just more Planeswalkers for the grindy matchup. Then this mono blue list was surprising to see someone at 71 games, 63% win rate. Mono blue probably has a reasonable chance against the domain deck. Now, it's going to get worse with the advent of Cavern of Souls. One of the big bonus was being able to counter some of their bigger stuff, but through bounce, stuff like that might be able to tempo them out. You're winning through Haughty Djinn as well as Tolarian Terror. This is a very budget-friendly deck, but it's a little bit tricky to play. They're also playing some copies of Picklock Prankster, which has been seeing play in Pioneer in like the Phoenix lists. It's a really cool line from Jurassic Park. But just counter stuff, tempo, draw cards, bounce, phase things out, draw a bunch of cards with Flow of Knowledge, hope to never see a Sheoldred actually resolve. Shore up for protection along with Slip Out the Back. Witness protections, your removal. Some change the equations, just the situational counters. Fairy Mastermind's nice against Rafine decks. And then Chromhost Seed Shark comes in to kind of differentiate your threats, lets you go wide, as well as being a reasonable early blocker for some of the more aggressive decks. And then the last deck, this was Diamond to Mythic. This one had a reasonable win rate in terms of the Convoke deck. I apologize, I don't know why it's not showing up on that screen, 58%. But even like more recently, if we kind of play around with the parameters, I think this one was coming up more recently as well, so 56, so mid to high 50s, which is still super reasonable. This is the kind of Gruul Aggro Picnic Ruiner Questing Druid style deck, so just trying to get real aggro with this deck. So you have Cacophony Scamp, Swift Spear, Audacity to pump up stuff, some protection spells, Monstrous Rage. So with like Scamp, you can get its power really high, deal the damage, and then sacrifice it to then kind of fling it at your opponent. Some Inties in here, Picnic Ruiners. Some of them have been playing Giant Growth even in this year, 2023. Some Questing Druids get bigger, give you card advantage, as well as Voldaren Thrill Seeker that can be used as the fling. Your sideboard for kind of the go wide Wedding Announcement decks. Giant Growths just pump out more damage, Barrage, Torch the Tower, and then some Outland Liberators as well. So really just kind of going aggro as hell in this matchup. I personally don't see the benefit of sideboard Giant Growth, but What's this one running? Looks like the same list. Play Tranquil Furlback instead, I would say. Or even just play more Outland Liberators is probably better against the... You're playing 20 lands. If you want, you could play Jaya, like just something against non-sweeper decks, or just play like Ren's Resolve. I just think you want something more card advantage based, if I would think about this. Or just blow up artifacts and enchantments more. There's not really a graveyard deck, so I would probably go that route. But I would think that would be kind of the best route to kind of approach that kind of consideration. But that is it for the week. Let me know what you think, what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying, and we'll get the more videos out later in the week. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one.